when tech mogul Sophia Morgan's newborn daughter won't stop screaming on a cross-country flight, she's ready to disappear into the earth. 3 months of sleepless nights, postpartum anxiety, and the weight of doing it all alone have pushed her to breaking point. Then a soft-spoken single father in the seat behind her asks the question that will unravel everything she thought she knew about strength, vulnerability, and the courage it takes to let someone help. What happens next will restore your faith in human kindness and remind you that sometimes the most profound connections happen 30 feet above the ground. Before we dive in, make sure to hit subscribe and leave a comment. Where in the world are you watching from? The crying started before takeoff. Sophia Morgan pressed her back into the first-class seat, her 3-month-old daughter Emma rigid against her chest, tiny fists clenched like she was fighting the entire world. The baby's wails cut through the cabin's polite murmur, sharp and relentless. "Shh, baby girl, please." Sophia's voice cracked. She bounced Emma gently, the motion automatic now, muscle memory from 3 months of this. 3 months of wondering what she'd done wrong. A flight attendant appeared, all practiced sympathy and lowered voice. "Can I get you anything, Ms. Morgan? Perhaps some warm milk for the little one?" "She's breastfeeding," Sophia said, the words tight. "She just ate. Emma's cry pitched higher, and Sophia felt her own composure fracture. "I'm sorry. I know this is disruptive." "Not at all." But the flight attendant's smile was thin, and Sophia caught her glance toward the other passengers. Sophia had built Morgan Dynamics from nothing. She'd stood in boardrooms full of men who doubted her, pitched to investors who questioned whether a 26-year-old could revolutionize supply chain software, negotiated deals worth hundreds of millions. She'd never felt as powerless as she did holding her crying daughter at 30 feet. Emma's face was red, streaked with tears, her little mouth open in another wail that seemed to reach into Sophia's chest and squeeze. Other passengers were trying not to stare. A businessman in 2A kept glancing over his shoulder, his jaw tight. An elderly woman across the aisle offered a sympathetic nod, but even her patience looked strained. Sophia stood, swaying slightly as the plane hit turbulence. She walked to the back of first class, past the galley where flight attendants whispered among themselves. Emma's cries echoed off the cabin walls. "I don't know what you want," Sophia whispered into Emma's tiny ear. "I don't know what I'm doing wrong." She'd read every book. Hired the best nanny in San Francisco before Emma was even born, though Maria had quit after 2 weeks. "The baby, she is not sick," Maria had said gently. "But she is, how you say, very sensitive. She needs much patience." Patience. Sophia had built a company on 16-hour days and razor-sharp efficiency. She'd optimized everything in her life except the way Emma arched her back and screamed like Sophia was hurting her just by existing. Behind her, she heard a man's voice, soft and careful. "Excuse me." Sophia turned. A man in his early 30s sat in 1C, dark hair slightly tousled, wearing a wrinkled button-down that suggested he'd dressed quickly. His eyes were kind but tired, the kind of tired that came from experience, not just lack of sleep. "I'm sorry to bother you," he said, "but may I try something?" Every instinct told Sophia to say no. She didn't know this man. Emma was her responsibility, her daughter, her problem to solve. But Emma's cries were getting more desperate, and Sophia could feel herself breaking apart. "I have a 2-year-old, the man continued. "Had a colicky baby. I know that sound." "She's not colicky," Sophia said quickly. The pediatrician said, "I'm not diagnosing anything." His voice stayed gentle. "I'm just thinking she might be overstimulated. Sometimes they just need a different kind of stillness." Sophia looked down at Emma, whose cries had taken on a hoarse quality that made Sophia's heart clench. The businessman in 2A was openly glaring now. The flight attendants kept checking their watches. "What would you do?" she asked. "May I?" He gestured toward Emma, and Sophia felt something in her chest resist. She'd barely let anyone else hold her daughter. Maria had tried, but Emma cried harder. Her mother had flown in from Boston and lasted exactly 4 hours before suggesting Sophia hire more help, but this man's eyes held something she recognized, not judgment, not pity. Understanding. Sophia took a step closer. The man stood slowly, his movements deliberate and calm. "I'm Daniel, by the way. Daniel Morrison. Sophia." "Hi, Sophia." He looked down at Emma, whose cries had softened slightly, as if she could sense the change in energy. "And who's this beautiful girl?" "Emma." "Hi, Emma." Daniel's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "You're having a rough day, aren't you?" He didn't reach for her immediately. Instead, he held out his hand, letting Emma see him. Her crying stuttered, curiosity flickering across her tiny features. "That's right," Daniel murmured. "You're okay. Everything's okay." Sophia felt her arms loosening before her mind caught up. She found herself passing Emma to this stranger, this man who spoke to her daughter like he already knew her. Daniel cradled Emma against his chest, one hand supporting her head, the other spread across her tiny back. He didn't bounce or sway, he simply stood still, breathing deeply, his presence completely focused on the baby in his arms. Emma's cries softened to whimpers, then to small hiccuping sounds. "Sometimes they just need to feel secure," Daniel said quietly. "Not solved or fixed or made better, just held." Sophia watched her daughter's face relax, her tiny fists unclenching. Emma's eyes, dark like Sophia's, fluttered closed. "How did you—" Sophia started, then stopped. The cabin had gone quiet except for the steady hum of the engines. The businessman in 2A had turned back to his laptop. The flight attendants had stopped hovering. "Practice," Daniel said simply, "and the knowledge that it's not your fault." The words hit Sophia like a physical blow. She felt tears she'd been holding back for weeks rise in her throat. "She cries all the time," Sophia whispered. "3 months, and I can't. I don't know what she needs." "You're doing everything right." Daniel's voice was certain, matter of fact. "Some babies are just more sensitive to the world. It doesn't mean you're failing." Emma was fully asleep now, her tiny chest rising and falling against Daniel's shirt. Sophia stared at her daughter's peaceful face and felt something crack open inside her chest. "I should be able to do this," she said. "I run a company. I have 200 employees. I should be able to handle one baby." Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Being a good CEO and being a good mother use completely different skills. One doesn't make the other easier. "You don't know what I do for work. I can guess." He glanced around first class, at Sophia's designer clothes, the way the flight attendant had used her name, something successful, something that requires control. Sophia almost smiled. "Supply chain software. I optimize efficiency." "And babies," Daniel said, "are the opposite of efficient." This time she did smile, just a little. "The ultimate disruption to any system." "Exactly." Daniel shifted slightly, and Emma stirred but stayed asleep. "When my son Jake was born, I thought I could approach parenting like I approached everything else: research, planning, execution. I had spreadsheets." "Spreadsheets?" "Feeding schedules, sleep training protocols, development milestones." Daniel shook his head. "Jake ignored every single one, cried for 4 months straight. My wife, my ex-wife, she handled it better than I did. She just trusted her instincts." "What happened?" Sophia asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. "She died when Jake was 18 months old. Car accident." The words hung in the air between them. Sophia felt her breath catch. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry." Daniel nodded, his expression soft but steady. "It's been 8 months now. Jake and I are figuring it out together." Sophia looked at this man holding her sleeping daughter and felt something shift inside her chest. Not attraction, though. Daniel was quietly handsome in a way that suggested kindness rather than arrogance, but recognition. The understanding that comes from meeting someone who knows the weight of responsibility, the fear of getting it wrong. "Is he with you?" she asked. "On the flight?" "With my parents in Portland. I had to come to San Francisco for work. I'm a physical therapist. Had a consultation with a clinic out there." Daniel glanced down at Emma. "I was supposed to fly back yesterday, but the case was more complex than expected." "What kind of case?" "Pediatric. Little girl, maybe 5, with cerebral palsy. She needs specialized equipment, but her family can't afford it." Daniel's voice was matter-of-fact, but Sophia caught the edge of frustration. "Insurance won't cover what she really needs." Sophia studied his face. "You stayed to help. I stayed to try." The plane hit another patch of turbulence, and Daniel automatically adjusted his hold on Emma, keeping her stable. She didn't even stir. "How do you do that?" Sophia asked. "Do what?" "Make it look so easy." Daniel was quiet for a moment. "It's not easy. I spent the first 6 months after Sarah died convinced I was going to break him. Jake would cry, and I'd panic. I'd call Sarah's mom at 2 in the morning, sobbing into the phone because I couldn't get him to sleep. But now I know that babies don't break as easily as we think they do, and neither do we." He looked at Sophia directly. "You're stronger than you think." Sophia felt tears threaten again. "I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm failing her every day. The fact that you care this much means you're not failing." Emma made a small sound in her sleep, a tiny sigh that made Sophia's chest tighten with love and worry in equal measure. "She's beautiful," Daniel said quietly. "She's perfect." Sophia replied automatically, then stopped. "I mean, she is. She's healthy and beautiful and perfect. I just can't seem to make her happy. Maybe happiness isn't the goal right now. Maybe it's just being. Being present, available, willing to keep trying even when you don't know what you're doing." The flight attendant approached, her expression apologetic. "We're beginning our descent into Portland. I'll need you to return to your seats." Sophia felt panic flutter in her chest. As soon as Daniel moved, as soon as Emma woke up, the crying would start again. She'd be back where she started, alone with a baby she couldn't comfort. Daniel seemed to sense her fear. "It's okay," he said quietly. "She's had a good rest. Sometimes that's all they need." He transferred Emma back to Sophia with the same careful deliberation he'd used to take her. Emma stirred, made a small sound of protest, but didn't cry. Her eyes opened, unfocused but calm. "Hi, baby girl," Sophia whispered. "Did you have a good nap?" Emma looked up at her with those dark eyes, and for the first time in weeks, Sophia didn't see accusation or disappointment, just curiosity, just her daughter looking back at her. "Thank you," Sophia said to Daniel as they returned to their seats. "I don't know how to thank you enough." "No need." Daniel settled back into 1C, pulling out his phone. "We're all just doing our best." The plane began its descent, and Sophia strapped Emma into her car seat. Her daughter fussed slightly but didn't cry. Instead, she seemed to watch the cabin around her with new interest, as if the world had become slightly less overwhelming. Sophia closed her eyes and let herself breathe for the first time in hours. When they landed, she watched Daniel gather his things: a worn leather messenger bag, a paperback book with a cracked spine, a coffee cup he'd forgotten to throw away. He moved with the same deliberate calm he'd shown with Emma, no wasted motion but no rush either. As passengers began filing off the plane, Daniel paused at Sophia's row. "Take care, Emma," he said softly. Then, to Sophia, "You're doing better than you think you are." Sophia wanted to say something more, to ask for his number, or offer to help with the little girl in San Francisco, or just find some way to keep this connection alive. But Emma was starting to fuss again, and other passengers were waiting, and Daniel was already moving toward the exit with a small wave goodbye. By the time Sophia made it off the plane, he was gone. She stood in the Portland airport, holding her daughter and her diaper bag, and the strange, new feeling that something had shifted. Not fixed. Emma was still a colicky baby, and Sophia was still a single mother figuring it out as she went. But something had changed in that moment when a stranger had held her crying daughter and told Sophia she wasn't failing. Emma started to fuss as they waited for their connecting flight to San Francisco. But this time, instead of panic, Sophia felt something different. She thought about Daniel's words, sometimes they just need to feel secure, not solved or fixed or made better, just held. Sophia held her daughter close and whispered, "It's okay, baby girl, we're figuring this out together." And for the first time in 3 months, she believed it might be true. 3 weeks later, Sophia stood in her corner office overlooking San Francisco Bay, Emma sleeping in a bassinet beside her desk. The baby monitor app on her phone showed steady green waves, peaceful sleep, the kind that had become more frequent since the flight from Portland. "The Yamamoto deal is moving forward," her assistant Marcus said, sliding a tablet across the polished conference table. "They want to close by end of quarter." Sophia nodded, scanning the numbers. Morgan Dynamics was about to land its biggest contract yet, a supply chain overhaul for Yamamoto Industries that would triple their revenue and establish them as a major player in the Pacific market. 6 months ago, this would have consumed every waking moment. Now, she found herself listening with half her attention to Emma's soft breathing. "There's one complication," Marcus continued. "They want you in Tokyo next week for the final presentation. 3 days, possibly 4. Sophia's stomach dropped. She looked down at Emma, who had finally learned to sleep for longer than 2 hours at a stretch. The thought of leaving her felt impossible. "Can we do it remotely?" Marcus's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Sophia, this is Yamamoto Industries. They don't do remote meetings for $100 million contracts." Emma stirred in her bassinet, making a small sound that used to send Sophia into immediate panic. Now she waited, watching her daughter's face. Emma settled back into sleep without crying. "I need to think about it," Sophia said. "Think about it?" Marcus had been her assistant for 3 years, had seen her make split-second decisions on deals twice as complex. "This is what we've been working toward for the past year." He was right, of course. But something had shifted since the plane, since Daniel had shown her what it looked like to simply be present with Emma instead of trying to solve her. The idea of flying to Tokyo, of leaving Emma with a nanny she barely knew, made her chest tighten. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "How's my granddaughter? Any progress on the nanny situation?" Sophia had been through 4 nannies since Maria. Each one came with excellent references and left within days, citing Emma's difficult temperament or special needs, as if needing comfort was a failing. "Still looking," Sophia typed back. "You can't do this alone, sweetheart. You're running a company." The message stung because it wasn't wrong. She was exhausted, running on 4 hours of sleep and sheer determination. But every time she imagined handing Emma to another stranger, she thought about Daniel's gentle certainty. "The fact that you care this much means you're not failing. Give me until tomorrow on Tokyo," Sophia told Marcus. That evening, Sophia sat in her living room, a minimalist space of clean lines and expensive furniture that had never been designed for a baby. Emma lay on her playmat, staring up at the black and white patterns that were supposed to stimulate infant development. She wasn't crying, but she wasn't content either. Just existing in that liminal space between sleep and distress that had become their normal. Sophia's laptop was open to the Yamamoto presentation, but she found herself scrolling through her phone instead. Without quite planning to, she opened LinkedIn and searched for Daniel Morrison, physical therapist, Portland. 3 results came up. The third one had a photo that made her heart skip. Daniel in scrubs, smiling at the camera with that same quiet kindness she remembered from the plane. His profile was sparse: Morrison Physical Therapy, specializing in pediatric cases, A few recommendations from grateful parents. Before she could stop herself, Sophia clicked, "Message." "Hi Daniel. This is Sophia from the flight 3 weeks ago, Emma's mom. I wanted to thank you again for your help that day. Emma has been sleeping better since then, and I think your advice about just being present rather than trying to fix everything has made a real difference. I hope you and Jake are doing well. Best." Sophia Shea hit send before she could overthink it, then immediately regretted it. He probably got messages from grateful patients all the time. He'd been kind to a stranger on a plane, nothing more. Her phone buzzed 20 minutes later. "Hi Sophia. So glad to hear Emma is doing better. I've thought about you both several times. How are you doing?" That's the part people forget to ask. Jake and I are well. He started calling airplanes Emma planes because I told him about meeting a baby on the plane to San Francisco. Daniel. Sophia stared at the message, warmth spreading through her chest. He'd thought about them. He'd told his son about meeting Emma. "I'm figuring it out. Some days better than others. I have a big work decision coming up that's making me question everything. Want to talk about it?" "No pressure, just know the offer is there." Sophia looked down at Emma, who had managed to grab one of the dangling toys and was studying it with intense concentration. 3 weeks ago, she would have said no immediately. She didn't share personal struggles with near strangers, didn't ask for advice, didn't admit uncertainty. But something about Daniel's presence had stayed with her. That sense of being understood without being judged. "Would you mind if I called? I could use an outside perspective." "Of course. I'm free now, if you want." Sophia's hands were shaking slightly as she dialed the number he sent. He answered on the second ring. "Hi, Sophia." Just hearing his voice brought back the feeling of safety she'd experienced on the plane. "Hi. Thank you for this. I know it's probably weird, calling someone I met once on an airplane. Not weird at all. Sometimes the people we meet in transit are exactly who we need to talk to." There was a pause, filled with what sounded like a 2-year-old chattering in the background. "Jake, can you play with your blocks for a few minutes? Daddy needs to talk to his friend." "Friend." The word settled something in Sophia's chest. "Tell me about this work decision," Daniel said. Sophia found herself explaining the Yamamoto deal, the trip to Tokyo, the pressure she felt to prove she could still run her company while being a single mother. As she talked, she realized she was pacing, Emma watching her from the playmat with those dark, serious eyes. "It sounds like an incredible opportunity," Daniel said when she finished. "But?" "I didn't say but. You were thinking it." Daniel chuckled, a warm sound that made Sophia wish she could see his face. "You know me too well for someone I've met once." "So, what were you thinking?" "I was thinking about how you're framing this, like you have to choose between being a good mother and being a successful businesswoman. Don't I? Do you think your daughter would be better off with a mother who gave up her dreams, or with a mother who found a way to honor both parts of herself?" Sophia stopped pacing. "I never thought of it that way. When Sarah died," Daniel said quietly, "I almost quit my practice. I thought I had to choose between being a good father and being a physical therapist. But Jake needed to see me as a whole person, not just his dad. He needed to know that people can love deeply and work meaningfully, and that those things don't cancel each other out." "So you kept working?" "I adjusted how I worked. Fewer hours, more selective about cases. But I stayed who I was, just adapted." Emma started to fuss, and Sophia automatically knelt beside the playmat, stroking her daughter's cheek. To her surprise, Emma calmed at the touch. "What if I take her with me?" Sophia said suddenly. "To Tokyo? Why not? She's portable. She breastfeeds." "Maybe." Sophia felt an idea taking shape. "Maybe the solution isn't leaving her behind or giving up the deal. Maybe it's finding a different way." "That sounds like something a very smart CEO would think of," Daniel said, and Sophia could hear the smile in his voice. They talked for another hour, the conversation drifting from work to parenting to the strange intimacy that comes from sharing struggles with someone who understands. Daniel told her about the little girl in San Francisco, how he'd managed to get her the equipment she needed through a combination of grant applications and what he sheepishly admitted was aggressive networking. You got them to donate a Protion's $30,000 mobility chair, Sophia said. That's not networking, that's advocacy. Her name is Lucy, Daniel said. 5 years old, bright as anything. She deserves to move through the world like any other kid. Sophia found herself thinking about resources, about the foundation account Morgan Dynamics maintained for charitable giving. What's the clinic's name? Bay Area Pediatric Therapy. Why? Just curious. When they finally said goodbye, Sophia felt lighter than she had in weeks. She looked down at Emma, who was drowsing on her playmat, and made a decision. The next morning, she walked into the office with Emma in her carrier and called Marcus into her office. "I'll do the Tokyo trip," she said, "but Emma comes with me." Marcus blinked. "You want to bring a baby to the most important presentation in the company's history? She's not just any baby. She's my baby. And if Yamamoto Industries wants to work with Morgan Dynamics, they work with all of me." "Sophia, I'm not asking for permission, Marcus. I'm telling you how this is going to work. Book 2 seats, find out about bringing a car seat on international flights, and research the best hotels in Tokyo for traveling with an infant." Marcus stared at her for a long moment, then slowly smiled. "You know what? This is either going to be brilliant or a complete disaster. Then let's make sure it's brilliant." That afternoon, while Emma napped in her bassinet, Sophia researched Bay Area Pediatric Therapy. The clinic's website showed photos of children with various disabilities working with therapists, learning to walk or communicate or simply move with more ease. At the bottom of the About page she found Daniel's photo and bio. Daniel Morrison specializes in pediatric physical therapy with an emphasis on accessibility and family-centered care. He believes every child deserves the tools to reach their full potential. Sophia opened her laptop and began typing an email to the clinic's development coordinator. Morgan Dynamics would be making a substantial donation to their equipment fund with one specific request, that they purchase whatever Lucy needed, and that they tell Daniel Morrison it came from a grateful mother whose baby he'd once held on an airplane. As she hit send, Emma stirred in her bassinet. Her eyes opened, focusing on Sophia's face with that serious expression that had once felt like judgment, but now seemed like simple recognition. "Hi, baby girl," Sophia whispered. "Guess what? We're going to Tokyo." Emma made a small sound that might have been approval or might have been the beginning of a cry, but for once, Sophia wasn't worried about which it would be. She was learning to trust the process, to believe in her ability to figure things out as they came. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Any news on the nanny front?" Sophia looked down at her daughter, then typed back, "I think we're okay on our own for now." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then, "Oh, sweetheart, are you sure?" "I'm sure," Sophia replied. And for the first time since Emma was born, she meant it. Outside her office window, the San Francisco Bay sparkled in the afternoon light. Emma had fallen back asleep, one tiny fist curled against her cheek. In 2 days, they would board a plane to Tokyo together, mother and daughter facing the world as a team. Sophia opened the Yamamoto presentation and began making adjustments. If she was going to do this, she was going to do it right, not as a woman trying to prove she could have it all, but as a mother who refused to believe she had to choose. The Tokyo boardroom was a study in minimalist perfection, polished concrete floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline, a conference table that could seat 20 but felt intimate with just 6 people around it. Sophia sat at one end, her laptop open, presentation remote in hand. At her feet, Emma slept peacefully in her carrier, having charmed the Yamamoto executives during introductions with what Hiroshi Yamamoto himself had called the most serious expression I've ever seen on a baby. The 3rd phase implementation, Sophia was saying, clicking to her next slide, reduces inefficiency by 63% while maintaining full transparency across all vendor relationships. Yamamoto leaned forward, his silver hair catching the afternoon light. And the timeline for full integration? 18 months for complete rollout, with measurable improvements visible within the first quarter. Emma stirred slightly but didn't wake. Sophia had timed the presentation perfectly, right after Emma's afternoon feeding, when she typically slept for 2 hours. The flight from San Francisco had been surprisingly smooth. Emma had slept most of the way, nestled against Sophia's chest while she reviewed her notes and felt something like peace settle in her bones. "The cost projections," said Kenji Sato, Yamamoto's head of operations, "they seem aggressive. They're based on actual performance data from our pilot programs with 3 comparable companies." Sophia clicked to her comparison chart. "Morgan Dynamics doesn't make promises we can't keep." As she spoke, Sophia felt a confidence she hadn't experienced in months. Not the brittle, anxious energy she'd been running on since Emma's birth, but something deeper. She was good at this. She'd always been good at this. Having Emma here didn't diminish that it completed it. The presentation concluded to satisfied nods and whispered conversations in Japanese. Yamamoto stood, extending his hand. "Ms. Morgan, this is exactly what we were hoping to see. You've convinced us that Morgan Dynamics is the right partner for this venture." Relief flooded through Sophia's chest. "I'm honored by your confidence, Mr. Yamamoto. There is one final matter to discuss," Yamamoto continued. "The implementation will require significant on-site presence from your team over the next 18 months. Are you prepared for that level of commitment?" Sophia felt Emma shift in her carrier, a small sigh that might have been contentment. 6 months ago, she would have said yes without hesitation, would have committed to whatever travel was necessary. Now, she looked down at her daughter and felt the answer crystallize. "Absolutely," she said, "though I should mention that my work style has evolved recently. I've found that bringing my daughter to important meetings actually improves my focus and decision-making. I hope that won't be a problem for future collaborations." The room went quiet. Sophia felt her heart rate spike, wondering if she'd just torpedoed the biggest deal in her company's history. Then Yamamoto smiled, glancing down at Emma's sleeping form. "My own daughter is now CEO of our European division. When she had her first child 3 years ago, she brought him to board meetings for 6 months. We found that having new life present reminded us what we were working toward, not just profit, but legacy. Emma has been my best teacher in efficiency," Sophia said, surprising herself with the admission. "She's shown me the difference between being busy and being effective." After the contracts were signed and hands were shaken, Sophia found herself alone in the hotel room. She'd booked a suite with space for Emma's travel crib and a view of Tokyo Tower that glittered against the evening sky. Emma was awake now, lying on the bed and staring up at the ceiling with that intense concentration that had once worried Sophia but now seemed like simple curiosity about the world. "We did it, baby girl," Sophia said, lying down beside her daughter. "We actually did it." Her phone buzzed with congratulations from Marcus, from her board members, from investors who'd been waiting for this exact moment. But the message that made her smile was from Daniel. Saw the Morgan Dynamics press release about the Yamamoto deal. "Congratulations. How was traveling with Emma?" Sophia took a photo of Emma on the hotel bed, Tokyo's lights blinking behind her, and sent it with the message, "She's becoming quite the international businesswoman. She looks like she was born for this." "How are you feeling?" Sophia stared at the question, considering her answer. How was she feeling? Triumphant, yes, but also something else. Complete, maybe. Like pieces of herself that had been scattered for months were finally fitting back together. Like I finally figured out that I don't have to choose between being Emma's mom and being myself. They're the same thing. That's beautiful. And true. Emma made a sound, not crying, just a small vocalization that seemed to be directed at the lights outside the window. Sophia reached over and stroked her daughter's cheek. "Can I ask you something?" she typed. "Of course. That day on the plane, when you held Emma, did you know it would work?" The calming her down. The response took a few minutes to come. "Honestly, no. I just knew she needed something different than what she was getting. Sometimes the solution isn't more complex, it's simpler. You were trying so hard to fix her that you couldn't just be with her. And now you're being with her while still being yourself. That's the difference." Sophia looked down at Emma, who had managed to grab her own foot and was examining it with scientific interest. "I have a confession," Sophia typed. "I made a donation to the clinic where you work. For Lucy, the little girl who needed the mobility equipment." "Sophia, you didn't have to. I wanted to. You gave me something on that plane that I can't repay. But I could do something for Lucy. She got her chair 2 weeks ago. The joy on her face. I have videos I can show you sometime. I'd like that." There was a pause in the conversation, filled with something Sophia couldn't quite name. Not romance, exactly, but connection. Recognition. The feeling of being understood by someone who expected nothing from her but authenticity. "Are you back in San Francisco soon?" Daniel asked. "Tomorrow evening." Emma's first international flight as a business traveler. "Jake and I are driving down to the city this weekend. There's a playground in Golden Gate Park that's accessible for kids with different abilities. I like to take him there to play with all kinds of children. Would you and Emma like to meet us there? No pressure." Sophia's heart did something complicated in her chest. She thought about her weekend plans, emails to catch up on, presentations to prepare, the endless cycle of work that had defined her life for years. Then she looked at Emma, who was now trying to eat her own foot, and felt something shift. We'd love that. The flight home was everything the flight to Portland 3 weeks ago had not been. Emma slept peacefully in the bassinet seat Sophia had purchased, waking only to eat and look around with bright curiosity before settling back into contentment. Other passengers smiled and cooed instead of glaring. The flight attendants offered genuine congratulations on Sophia's successful business trip. "First time traveling internationally with a baby?" asked the woman sitting across the aisle. "First time traveling with her at all," Sophia admitted. "I was terrified." "She's a natural," the woman said, watching Emma's serious expression as she studied the airplane window. "Some babies are just born ready for adventure." Born ready for adventure. Sophia liked that better than difficult or colicky or high maintenance. Emma wasn't broken or wrong or in need of fixing. She was just herself, intense, curious, requiring presence rather than solutions. They landed in San Francisco at sunset, the city's lights beginning to twinkle as they descended. Emma watched out the window with fascination, as if she recognized home. In the taxi to her apartment, Sophia's phone rang. Her mother. "How did it go, sweetheart? Was Emma okay? Did you find childcare in Tokyo?" "Mom, slow down," Sophia laughed. "Emma was perfect. She came to the presentation with me." "She what?" "She slept through the whole thing. The clients loved her. We got the contract." There was a long pause. "You brought a baby to the most important business meeting of your career?" "I brought my daughter to work with me, yes, and it was exactly right." Another pause. Then, quietly, "You sound different, Sophia, happier." "I think I am." "I think we both are." That night, Sophia sat in her living room with Emma on her lap, both of them looking out at the San Francisco Bay. The Yamamoto contracts were signed. The biggest deal in Morgan Dynamics history was official, and instead of feeling pressure to immediately start on the next challenge, Sophia felt something she hadn't experienced in years: contentment. Emma made a small sound and reached up toward Sophia's face, her tiny fingers brushing against her mother's cheek. The gesture was so deliberate, so clearly intentional, that Sophia felt tears spring to her eyes. "I see you, baby girl," she whispered. "I finally see you." Her phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "Safe travels. Looking forward to Saturday." Sophia looked down at her daughter, then out at the city lights, then at the future that stretched ahead of them, full of playgrounds and presentations, of business trips and bedtime stories, of learning to balance being a mother with being herself. For the first time since Emma was born, the future felt not like a problem to solve, but like an adventure to embrace. "Looking forward to it too," she typed back. "Both of us." Saturday morning dawned clear and bright, the kind of San Francisco day that made the city feel like a promise. Sophia stood in Golden Gate Park, Emma strapped to her chest in a carrier, watching a little boy with dark curls race toward them across the playground. "Emma, Emma," Jake Morrison called out, even though Emma couldn't possibly remember him. He was 2.5, all energy and enthusiasm, wearing a dinosaur t-shirt and light-up sneakers that blinked with each step. Behind him, Daniel walked at a more measured pace, carrying a diaper bag and what looked like a picnic lunch. He wore jeans and a soft gray sweater that made his eyes look warmer, and when he smiled at Sophia, she felt something flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with business or motherhood and everything to do with the way he looked at her, like he was genuinely happy to see her. "Hi," he said simply. "Hi." Jake reached them first, bouncing on his toes as he tried to get a better look at Emma. "She's still little," he announced, as if this were a disappointment. "She's only 4 months old," Daniel explained patiently. "Remember how we talked about how babies grow slowly? Can she play on the swings?" "Not yet, buddy, but she can watch you play on the swings." The playground Daniel had chosen was unlike any Sophia had seen, equipment designed for children with wheelchairs, quiet areas for kids who got overstimulated, sensory gardens with plants meant to be touched and smelled. It was thoughtfully inclusive without being institutional, the kind of place that made every child feel like they belonged. "This is incredible," Sophia said, watching a little girl in a wheelchair race her brother down parallel slides. "It took the city 3 years to get the funding," Daniel said, "but it was worth it. Jake loves coming here." They found a bench in the shade where Emma could observe the activity without getting overwhelmed. Sophia had learned to read her daughter's cues now, the way her eyes widened when she was curious, the slight tension in her body when things got too stimulating. Today Emma seemed alert but calm, taking in the sounds of children playing with what looked like scientific interest. "She's gotten so much more aware since the plane," Daniel observed, settling beside Sophia on the bench. "She has. The pediatrician says she's what they call a highly sensitive baby, more reactive to stimulation, more aware of her environment. I used to think it was a problem to solve, but now," Sophia adjusted Emma's position so she could see the playground better. "Now I think it might be a gift." Jake ran over, breathless and grass-stained. "Daddy, can you push me on the tire swing?" "Of course. You okay here?" Daniel asked Sophia. "We're perfect." Sophia watched Daniel push his son on the large tire swing, Jake's delighted shrieks filling the air. There was something graceful about the way Daniel moved, completely present with his child, never rushing or distracted. She thought about all the times she'd tried to multitask while caring for Emma, checking emails during feedings, taking calls while Emma napped, and felt a pang of recognition. "He's a good father," she said when Daniel returned, Jake having moved on to explore the sensory garden with 2 other children. "He makes it easy," Daniel replied, "though I didn't always think that." "What do you mean?" Daniel was quiet for a moment, watching Jake carefully touch the leaves of a lamb's ear plant while a little girl in leg braces showed him how soft they were. "After Sarah died, I was so afraid of getting it wrong that I couldn't get anything right. I'd read him 3 bedtime stories when he only wanted 1, or spend 20 minutes trying to get him to eat vegetables he clearly hated. I was so focused on being the perfect single parent that I forgot to just be his dad." What changed? Time. And therapy, honestly. I realized that Sarah hadn't been a perfect parent either, she'd just been present. She trusted her instincts and adjusted when things didn't work. Daniel glanced at Sophia. "Kind of like what you've been learning with Emma." Emma chose that moment to make a small sound of contentment, her tiny hand grasping at the fabric of Sophia's shirt. The gesture was so simple, so trusting, that Sophia felt her throat tighten. "I spent her first 3 months thinking I was broken," she admitted, "that there was something wrong with me because I couldn't make her happy. And now? Now I think maybe she wasn't supposed to make me happy right away either. Maybe we were both just learning how to be together." A comfortable silence fell between them, filled with the sounds of children playing and Emma's soft breathing. Sophia found herself studying Daniel's profile, the way he watched Jake with quiet attention, ready to intervene if needed, but content to let his son explore independently. "Can I ask you something personal?" she said. "Of course." "How do you do it? Date, I mean, being a single parent." Daniel's eyebrows lifted slightly. "What makes you think I date?" Sophia felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I just assumed, you're young and kind and clearly great with kids, I figured. I've been on exactly 3 dates since Sarah died," Daniel said gently. "2 were disasters, and 1 was nice but felt like betraying something." "Betraying what?" "The idea that I could love someone else the way I loved her, I guess. Or that Jake could handle sharing me." Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "Grief makes you think in absolutes sometimes. Like there's only so much love to go around." Emma was falling asleep in her carrier, lulled by the warm sun and the rhythm of conversation. Sophia adjusted the carrier's hood to shade her daughter's face. "Do you still feel that way?" she asked quietly. Daniel looked at her directly then, his brown eyes serious. "I'm starting to think that maybe love isn't finite. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it grows when you share it with the right people." The words hung in the air between them, gentle but loaded with meaning. Sophia felt her heart do something complicated, a flutter of possibility mixed with fear. "Jake, 5 more minutes!" Daniel called as his son began making the universal signs of playground fatigue, running in circles, his voice getting louder and more chaotic. "He's beautiful," Sophia said, watching the little boy try to climb up the slide instead of using the ladder. "He looks just like Sarah, same curls, same fearlessness." Daniel's voice was fond, but wistful. "Sometimes I catch myself waiting for her to walk through the door and tell me I'm doing everything wrong. Are you doing everything wrong?" "Some days it feels like it. But then he'll do something like this morning. He made me a sandwich for our picnic, peanut butter and crackers, and what I think was a crayon. He was so proud of it." "Did you eat it?" Daniel grinned. "Every bite. The crayon was actually not bad, waxy, but fruity." Sophia laughed, a real laugh that felt like it came from somewhere she'd forgotten existed. When was the last time someone had made her laugh like that? Jake came running over, red-faced and happy. "Daddy, I'm hungry." Perfect timing. Daniel pulled out the picnic lunch sandwiches cut into triangles, apple slices, crackers, and what looked like homemade cookies. "Did you bring enough for our friends?" "Yes. Emma can have cookies when she's bigger." They spread out a blanket on the grass, Jake chattering about everything he'd seen and done while Emma dozed peacefully in her carrier. Sophia found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in months, not thinking about emails or presentations or the million tasks waiting for her at home. "This is nice," she said, surprising herself. "Which part?" "All of it. Being here, talking to another adult, watching Emma be calm in a new place." She paused. "Feeling like a person instead of just a problem solver." Daniel nodded. "I know that feeling. For months after Sarah died, I was just Jake's dad who lost his wife. I forgot I used to have interests and opinions about things that had nothing to do with parenting or grief. What helped you remember?" "Honestly, time. And meeting people who saw me as more than my circumstances." He looked at her meaningfully. "Sometimes it takes an outside perspective to remind you who you are underneath all the roles you're playing." Emma stirred and woke, looking around with that serious expression that had become so familiar. She seemed to take in the new environment, the grass, the trees, the sounds of other children with calm curiosity. "She really has changed," Daniel said softly. Or maybe you both have. I think you're right. Sophia lifted Emma from the carrier, settling her on the blanket where she could see everything. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, you know. For her to go back to crying all the time, or for me to prove that I really can't handle this. What if there is no other shoe? What if this is just how it is now, you figuring it out together, getting better at being a team? Jake crawled over to the blanket, studying Emma with intense curiosity. Can she hold things? She's just learning, Sophia said. Want to try giving her something soft? Daniel pulled a small stuffed elephant from the diaper bag. This was Jake's when he was Emma's age. Jake carefully placed the elephant near Emma's hand, waiting patiently as she slowly grasped it with unsteady fingers. When she managed to hold it for a few seconds before dropping it, Jake clapped his hands in delight. She did it! She holded it! Watching her daughter interact with this little boy who treated her achievements like miracles, Sophia felt something shift in her chest. This community, connection, the simple pleasure of sharing a sunny afternoon with people who understood the weight of parenting, this was what she'd been missing. Thank you, she said to Daniel as Jake showed Emma how to make the elephant's ears flop. For what? For this. For seeing us as more than our problems. For, she gestured at Jake, gently entertaining Emma, at the peaceful scene around them. For reminding me that we don't have to do everything alone. Daniel's expression grew soft. You know, that first day on the plane, I almost didn't say anything. I thought about just letting you handle it on your own. What made you speak up? You looked exactly like I felt those first months after Sarah died, like you were drowning, but trying to make it look like swimming. He paused. And Emma reminded me of Jake when he was little. That intensity, that way of taking in everything around them, like they're processing the whole world at once. I'm glad you didn't stay quiet. Me too. The afternoon stretched on, easy and unhurried. Jake eventually convinced Daniel to push him on the swings again, while Sophia sat on the blanket with Emma, both of them watching the other families around them. For the first time since becoming a mother, Sophia didn't feel like an outsider looking in. She felt like part of the community of parents, part of something larger than her own struggles. As the sun began to set, painting the park in golden light, Daniel and Jake returned to the blanket. We should probably head home, Daniel said reluctantly. Jake gets cranky if he misses his nap. I don't need a nap, Jake protested, even as he rubbed his eyes. Of course not, Daniel said seriously. You never need naps. You just sometimes like to rest your eyes for an hour or two. As they packed up the picnic supplies, Daniel turned to Sophia. Would you like to do this again sometime? Maybe next weekend? I'd love to, Sophia said, meaning it completely. We both would. Jake hugged Sophia's legs goodbye, then very gently patted Emma's head. Bye, Emma. See you next time. Watching them walk away across the park, Daniel's hand in Jake's, their shadows long in the evening light, Sophia felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Not the sharp satisfaction of closing a deal or the relief of solving a problem, but simple happiness, the quiet contentment that comes from being exactly where you're supposed to be, with exactly the people you're meant to be with. Emma made a small sound, and Sophia looked down to find her daughter watching her with those dark, serious eyes. What do you think, baby girl? Sophia whispered. Should we see them again? Emma's expression seemed to say what Sophia was just beginning to understand. Some questions don't need answers, only trust. 8 months later, Sophia stood in the bathroom of her San Francisco apartment at 6:30 in the morning, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Emma's laughter echoed from the living room, mixed with Jake's animated voice explaining something about dinosaurs. Daniel's deeper tones provided a steady counterpoint, patient and amused. The scene should have felt chaotic: a toddler, a year-old baby, breakfast dishes in the sink, toys scattered across expensive furniture that had never been designed for children. Instead, it felt like home, in a way Sophia's perfectly curated space never had before. Sophia? Daniel called. Emma's asking for you. She doesn't ask for anything, Sophia called back, applying mascara with the efficiency of someone who had learned to do everything quickly. She's one. She barely has 5 words. Trust me, she's asking. Sophia smiled, despite herself. Daniel had become fluent in Emma's nonverbal communications in a way that still amazed her. He could distinguish between her hungry cry and her tired cry, knew that she preferred to be held facing outward when she was curious and facing inward when she was overwhelmed. He'd learned her rhythms as naturally as he'd learned Jake's, creating space for both children in his heart without making either feel less important. She found them in the living room, Jake building an elaborate block tower while Emma sat in her high chair, banging a spoon against the tray and looking expectantly toward the hallway. "See?" Daniel said, lifting Emma from the chair. She was waiting for Mama. Emma reached for Sophia with both arms, babbling something that might have been "ma-ma" or might have been random sounds, but made Sophia's chest warm either way. "Good morning, baby girl," Sophia murmured, kissing Emma's forehead. "Did you sleep well?" "She slept through the night again," Daniel said, handing Sophia a cup of coffee. 7 hours straight. That's 5 nights in a row. I think we can officially call her a good sleeper now. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. It had taken months of consistency, of learning to read Emma's cues, of trusting that her daughter's intensity was sensitivity rather than difficulty. But somewhere around her 8th month, Emma had settled into herself, still alert, still curious, but peaceful in a way that made Sophia wonder if the change had been in Emma or in her own ability to meet her daughter where she was. "Sophia, look," Jake called from his block tower, which now reached nearly to his shoulders. "It's taller than me." "That's incredible, Jake. You're quite the architect." Jake beamed with pride, then immediately knocked the tower down with gleeful abandon. Emma laughed at the crash, clapping her hands together. This had become their routine over the past 3 months. Daniel and Jake arriving early on Saturday mornings, the 4 of them spending the day together before Daniel and Jake returned to their apartment in the Mission. It wasn't exactly dating, though there was an undercurrent of something deeper growing between Sophia and Daniel. It was more like building a life together in careful increments, making sure both children felt secure before making any major changes. "I have news," Sophia said, settling Emma on her hip. "Good news and potentially complicated news." Daniel looked up from where he was helping Jake stack blocks again. "Let's hear the good news first. The Yamamoto implementation is ahead of schedule and under budget. They're so happy they want to expand the partnership to their South American operations." "Sophia, that's incredible." Daniel's smile was genuine, proud. He'd learned to celebrate her professional victories the way she'd learned to appreciate his quiet wins with difficult cases, both understanding that their work mattered, both making space for the other's ambitions. "What's the complicated part?" he asked. "They want me to spend 2 months in Sao Paulo starting next month, setting up the new systems, training their teams." Sophia felt Emma grab a handful of her hair, tugging gently. "I told them I'd need to bring Emma with me. And they said?" "They said yes, actually. Apparently having a baby at business meetings has become my signature move. They're booking us a family-friendly hotel, arranging for childcare during the longer sessions." Sophia paused, but 2 months is a long time. Daniel was quiet, processing. Jake had moved on from blocks to his toy cars, making elaborate vrooming sounds as he drove them across the coffee table. "How do you feel about it?" Daniel asked finally. "Professionally?" "Thrilled. It's exactly the kind of expansion I've been working toward." Sophia shifted Emma to her other hip. "Personally, I keep thinking about how much Emma will change in 2 months, how much Jake will grow, how different everything might be when we get back." "Things change whether you're here or in Sao Paulo," Daniel said gently. "The question is whether this is the right opportunity for you and Emma. Is it weird that I want to ask you what you think I should do?" Daniel smiled. 6 months ago, you would have made this decision without asking anyone. 6 months ago, I thought asking for input was the same as admitting weakness. And now? Now I know that the people who love you want you to succeed, that their opinion matters because they see you more clearly than you see yourself sometimes. Emma had managed to grab Sophia's earring and was examining it with intense concentration. Daniel reached over to gently extract it from her grip, his fingers brushing against Sophia's jaw in the process. The touch was brief, casual, but it sent warmth spreading through her chest. "I think," Daniel said carefully, "that you should go. Really, really. You're amazing at what you do, and Emma gets to see her mother being amazing. That's not something to postpone. But what about," Sophia gestured between them, at the careful thing they'd been building. "What about us?" Daniel's voice was gentle. "Sophia, I'm not going anywhere. Jake and I will be here when you get back, probably with about 50 new dinosaur facts and a tower of blocks that reaches the ceiling." Jake looked up at the mention of his name. "Are you going away, Sophia?" "Just for a little while," Sophia said, sitting down so she was at his eye level. "Emma and I have to go to Brazil for work." "Is Brazil far?" "Pretty far. But we'll video call you every day, and we'll bring you back something special." Jake considered this solemnly. "Can you bring me a Brazilian dinosaur?" Daniel laughed. "I don't think they sell those at the airport, buddy. We'll find you something dinosaur-related," Sophia promised. "Deal?" "Deal." Jake returned to his cars, satisfied. Later, after Jake had worn himself out at the playground and was napping on Sophia's couch, Emma dozed in her bassinet while Sophia and Daniel sat on the balcony overlooking the bay. The afternoon was clear, the water sparkling in the distance. "Can I tell you something?" Daniel said. "Always. I'm proud of you, not just for the business success, but for becoming the kind of person who can have both the career and the connection, the ambition and the presence." Sophia felt tears prick her eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you. That day on the plane, you didn't just calm Emma down. You showed me that it was possible to stop fighting against who she was and start working with it. You would have figured it out on your own. Maybe. But it would have taken longer, and it would have been lonelier." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city slowly wake up below them. Sophia thought about the past year, Emma's transformation from a crying, colicky baby to the curious, engaging child she was now. Her own journey from feeling like a failure as a mother to understanding that strength sometimes looked like vulnerability. The slow, careful way she and Daniel had built something together without rushing or forcing it. "Daniel? When Emma and I get back from São Paulo, would you and Jake maybe want to, I don't know, make this more official?" Daniel turned to look at her, eyebrows raised. "Are you asking me to move in with you?" "I'm asking if you'd want to start talking about what that might look like, for all of us." Daniel was quiet for a long moment, and Sophia felt her heart rate increase. Had she pushed too fast? Assumed too much? "I'd like that," he said finally. "I'd like that a lot. But I want to make sure we're doing it for the right reasons." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I want to make sure we're choosing each other, not just choosing not to be alone." Daniel reached over and took her hand. "I love spending time with you. I love watching Emma grow up. I love how Jake lights up when he sees you both. But I also love you, Sophia. Not just as Emma's mother or as someone who makes my life easier, but as you." The words settled between them, simple and profound. Sophia felt something she'd been holding in her chest for months finally relax. "I love you too," she said quietly. "I love your patience and your kindness, and the way you see the best in everyone, even when they can't see it in themselves. I love that Jake feels safe with you and that Emma trusts you. I love that you make me want to be better without making me feel like I'm not enough as I am." Daniel squeezed her hand. "So, São Paulo first, then we figure out the rest?" "São Paulo first, but knowing that there's something to come back to." From inside the apartment came the sound of Jake stirring from his nap, followed by Emma's babbling as she woke up from hers. Soon the peaceful afternoon would give way to snacks and stories, and bath time, to the gentle chaos of two small children who needed attention and care and love. But for now, Sophia and Daniel sat on the balcony holding hands, looking out at the bay and the future that stretched ahead of them. It wasn't the life either of them had planned. Daniel had never imagined falling in love again. Sophia had never pictured herself as part of a blended family, but it was the life they were choosing, day by day, decision by decision. "Ready to go back in?" Daniel asked as the sounds from inside grew more insistent. "Ready," Sophia said. They stood together, hands linked, and walked back into the apartment where two children waited for them, not just Emma and Jake, but the children they themselves were still learning to be. Open, trusting, willing to believe that love was not a finite resource, but something that grew stronger when shared. Emma reached up from her bassinet as they entered, and Jake stumbled over still sleepy and warm. Daniel scooped up Jake while Sophia lifted Emma, and for a moment they stood there in the living room, four people who had found each other across grief and fear, and the courage it takes to remain vulnerable in a world that often rewards hardness. Outside, San Francisco hummed with its usual energy. Soon Sophia and Emma would travel to Sao Paulo, and then they would return to build something new and lasting with Daniel and Jake. But right now, in this moment, they had everything they needed, each other, and the quiet certainty that some of the best things in life come not from planning or striving, but from the simple willingness to say yes when love finds you at 30 feet. Emma babbled something that might have been words or might have been pure contentment. Jake pointed to his block tower and began explaining its architectural significance. Daniel laughed at something Jake said, and Sophia felt her heart expand to hold it all, the noise and the mess and the beautiful, imperfect reality of a life built on trust rather than certainty. This was what she'd been searching for without knowing it, not perfection, but presence, not control, but connection, not the ability to fix everything, but the wisdom to know that some things don't need fixing, they just need love. Sometimes the most profound journeys begin with a crying baby and a stranger's gentle offer. "May I try something?" In learning to accept help, Sophia discovered that strength isn't about having all the answers, it's about being brave enough to keep asking the questions together.